everyone, how's it going? Matthew Bailey Media here, and welcome to another 2025 movie review. And this one may come as quite a surprise to you guys, even though I think I did the first movie's review as well. The only difference is that movie I saw straight on Peacock, and this one was released strictly in theaters, so this is literally the first time I've ever... Well, I guess I take that back. This is only the second franchise that's considered a horror franchise that I've ever actually gone to the movie theater to see it physically in theaters. The first of those being the Scream movies, obviously, and which I will be seeing Scream 7 in February next year in theaters. But with this one, this is, of course, my review on Five Nights at Freddy's 2. Yep, Five Nights at Freddy's 2. Now, and similar to like what my friend Matthew Davis Media has been saying about these films, neither one of us were like actual Five Nights at Freddy's fans, or like we never played the games. At least I never played the games, for sure. Now, I did think the first movie was, I guess the first movie did sort of help me get into the lore of the characters, and like all the different animatronics and all that sort of stuff, and why the story was so well told, which is why I think the first movie is definitely better than this one. Because when I went to see this movie in the theaters for the first time, obviously, the thing that really made no sense to me was that this movie, there were so many characters and stuff that I was like, I wasn't too sure like what's going on especially near the climax, and they do sort of hint at a third installment, or whatever, which I'm assuming is gonna take immediate inspiration from the third game of Five Nights at Freddy's. Now, I'm not too sure if they're gonna keep going after Five Nights at Freddy's 3. It just depends on how well this movie does, because this is the first time, like I said, that Five Nights at Freddy's film is released strictly in theaters and not in theaters and on Peacock like it was before. So now I will say the characters that we got introduced to in the last movie, Mike Schmidt, played by Josh Hutcherson, great guy by the way. He's been in iconic franchises like The Hunger Games. He was in Zathura as a really young boy. But most people know him from The Hunger Games. But when it comes to his character, I thought this character was somewhat, a lot better than, I feel like this character was a little bit downgraded in some ways with this film. Now, even though I never played the game of Five Nights at Freddy's 2, I do know there was one scene in the movie which is kind of shown in the trailer where he takes a little mask and holds it over his face so that the animatronics think he's one of them, and that it was one thing that I know was in the second game. So that's the only real thing I know about when it comes to the lore of the second game when it comes to comparing it to this movie. But aside from that, the character of Mike Schmidt I thought was sort of downgraded in a way in this film in some ways. We did get some returning characters. Now there's one character who I thought was dead in the first movie, but I guess I don't want to spoil anything for you guys. But I will say there's one character who was presumed dead in the second, or in the first movie, that is revealed to actually still be alive but just went nuts in the second movie. We don't actually see her, but see the character, but I think I guess since I said her, you probably know which character I'm referring to. But and I even hear that MatPat, or whatever, who, if y'all don't know who MatPat is, he's actually an iconic YouTuber who did this YouTube channel called Film Theorist. And he always says that iconic line, "It's just a theory," and he actually says that line in the first film, which I thought that was a cool cameo from him. Now, supposedly he shows up in this movie as in but not as himself again. He actually voices one of the animatronics in this film, but I was a little confused because that did not sound like him at all. If you know which animatronic I'm referring to, then that's great. But if not, it is, of course, the character of Toy Bonnie, the one with the bunny ears. And I gotta say, I was a little confused by that, because that did not sound like him at all. But, and apparently Megan Fox was in this movie, which is crazy. But, and going back to some of the other characters, Abby Schmidt, who is the little sister of, Mike, she comes back, and she, I will say, is a little bit more used in this movie when it comes to the whole animatronic situation. And Vanessa, who, as far as I know, in the games, or in the video games, she wasn't actually related to William Afton, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, I got over that in the first movie, but the way they utilized her in this film was, I think, really crazy. And the way that they ended her character in this film was sort of hinting at the third movie is kind of weird, if I must be honest. Now, and we barely got any Matthew Lillard in this movie. For those of you who haven't seen the first movie, Matthew Lillard was the guy who played William Afton in the first film, but he was disguised as like a, what do you call it, one of those people who helps you find a job or whatever when you're on probation or something like that. It's kind of weird, but he was disguised as one of those people in the first film, and then it's revealed at the end of the film that he's actually William Afton, who's the guy who created Five Nights at Freddy's, or in my case, or in the case of the actual location, Freddy's Fazbear Pizzeria. Now, we do sort of revisit the original location that we saw in the first film, but this whole film is obviously based on a new location, which is really all I'm going to say. But I will say Five Nights at Freddy's 2, not as great as the first movie, even though I've never played the games, but I will say I still found it somewhat enjoyable, just not as enjoyable as the first. So anyways, let me give you my rating of the film. So, for my rating of Five Nights at Freddy's 2, like I said, I didn't think it was as good as the first movie. I believe I gave the first movie a 3.5 out of 5. But for me, I'm probably gonna just give this movie a 3 out of 5. Yep, so it's still an okay movie, but again, I never played the games, or I really wasn't that into it. So, that's sort of all for now in this movie review. The next movie review that I'm definitely going to be doing is probably going to be between the SpongeBob movie, Search for SquarePants, and Avatar Fire and Ash. Not sure which one I'll post first, but keep an eye out for those two reviews, and as always, I will see all of you guys in the next video.